single largest interfaith organization in North America, with a 35-person professional staff and a $4.5 million budget. But still, as far as organizational capacity goes, that's really small. I mean, the Olive Garden, in Champaign, probably has a larger staff on the average Friday night than Interfaith Youth Corps. Right? So the question for us was, how do we focus? And for us, focusing, because you got to be able to do something well. You can't do everything well. You ought to be able to do something well. What we think we do well is partner with higher education and help America's 2,800 four-year college campuses become models of interfaith cooperation and nurture the kind of leaders that are Greg Danvers and Masood and others in this room. That's what we do. I think another organization or other organizations have to step up and do other kinds of work. By the way, as the director of a nonprofit organization, probably the single most common comment that I will get is somebody standing up and saying, we really need an interfaith organization in Brazil, and you ought to do that. And I'm like, that's such a great idea. You ought to do that. And don't tell me what to do. My plate is full. You ought to start that, right? And just like in multiculturalism, just like in environmentalism, there's been a dramatic growth in those organizations. I think there's going to be a dramatic growth in interfaith organizations, and we can pry a guy like Greg away from medicine into interfaith. I think that's great. It's probably not going to happen, so we're going to have to live with him at the intersection of those two things. But I'm hoping other people in this room walk out of here thinking to themselves, how do I start an interfaith organization that deals with the evangelical Catholic divide in Champaign County, let's say? Is there one more handout, do I remember? Or is that it? Last question?
Yes. In putting together a conference of your people becoming here, I ran into some problems with some faculty who thought that they could not promote a religious group. And do you consider yourself a religious group? Or how do we answer?
Yeah, right. I think that's a great question. So that's a hugely important question, and it's similar to the question that the gentleman in the back asked. So I think what we do is a civic enterprise. Relationships between diverse communities in a nation is a civic enterprise. And just like building positive relationships between Latinos and Asians is a civic enterprise, building positive relationships between Jews and Muslims is a civic enterprise, right? That doesn't mean that there aren't, people say this to me all the time. They're like, man, this is such a great idea, but religious diversity, it's just so hard. And I'm like, and race is easy? And sexuality is easy? No, those things are really hard also. It's just that we recognize as a society that if you don't take them on, if the good guys, good people, don't engage them, the only people who will are the bad people. Very seriously, right? Fundamentalists rush in where liberals fear to tread. If we don't positively and proactively engage the very real dynamic of America's religious diversity, we simply let the Islamophobes and the anti-Mormon folks and the anti-evangelicals and the aggressive atheists and the anti-secular folks, and there are plenty of them, and they are not shy, and now they have the internet at their availability to do that. So as uncomfortable as it might be, I don't think that there is, I think that not engaging this issue is simply a matter of civic irresponsibility, especially in a post-9/11 climate. Right? I'm going to give you like a close-to-home example of this. Right? By the way, this is what my second book, Sacred Ground, is basically about this. It's about what it means for America to engage religious diversity. So my wife has a couple teenage nephews in the suburbs of Houston, kind of the Naperville of Houston is where they live. And one of them, Sahil, says to me one day, pizza day is the worst day at school. And I'm like, you got a fever, kid? Well, what the heck is wrong with you, right? You're 16 years old. Pizza day is the best day at school. And he's like, no, it's the worst day. Because I'm in the third lunch period, and by the time I get to lunch, all the cheese pizza is gone, and the only pizza that's left is the pepperoni and sausage pizza, and obviously we can't eat that, so I end up eating breadsticks and salad. I'm like, all right, that sounds bad, but it's not like the worst thing ever. He's like, yeah, well, might come back to our lunch table with breadsticks and salad, and that reminds the kids at the lunch table that I'm Muslim, right? Because they're all eating pepperoni and sausage pizza, so it's kind of salient again that I'm Muslim. And so I spent the rest of the week being called terrorist and Osama bin Laden and Muslim extremist. And I spent the rest of the week getting pushed around in the playground. And I'm like, did the teachers see this? And he's like, they're not blind. Yeah, they see it. I'm like, do they do anything? And he's like, not really. And I think to myself, you know what? When I was called Slurpee Maker as a kid, teachers didn't do anything. But I bet you they do now. Right? Because I bet you, frankly, prejudice against Asian Americans has hit the cultural radar screen of American education. And so teachers are on the lookout for it and are aware of it. No, hey, no way. We don't do that here. Right? But the issue of religious prejudice isn't quite on the radar screen. This is a great, for me, prosaic example of if responsible institutions like public schools don't have some kind of a radar screen for this, it just means that everywhere from the bullies to the fundamentalists rush in and win. Right? I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying we got to do it. Thank you. If people are interested in books, I'll be back.